Morning. Please do not adjust your video sets. Unfortunately, yes, this is what I look like. This is what real people look like, unfortunately, without makeup on. You can probably hear my little boy in the background. Yeah, I'm not happy with the way my skin is at the moment. I'm going to have to ring up the doctor again and see whether or not there's something wrong with my blood work, but that's a separate issue. Now, recently, there was a programme that was on by Chris Packham. I say recently, it wasn't like last week or anything, it was probably over the last 6 months, where he actually suffers with a learning disability called Asperger's syndrome. And what he did was he highlighted to the general public about things like autism and disabilities and how they affect people. And I loved the way he did that. The only other person I know that's done a program very similar to that was, I forget her name, Jordan, because she doesn't always use Jordan as her name anymore, who has a son who's disabled. And she was talking about how difficult it is to get him into the right school that's going to help him, support him, and benefit him as he goes from being a child into adulthood. And the series that Chris Packham did was absolutely amazing. The way it explained by liaisoning and working with people with different disabilities, how a day in their head is and how a day affects them was brilliant. And if the Department of Work and Pensions, who obviously we know don't really care about anyone, was to physically sit down or even take the time to go through a daily routine with somebody who is trying to claim disability living allowance or trying to claim PIP. I think that's the only way they're really going to understand whether or not the people that are trying to genuinely claim these disability benefits has a real disability and isn't just pretending to be ill, as they seem to be accusing everybody of being. Okay, I mean, I had my disability benefit check done, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't do it. I literally had a nervous breakdown on the phone. It was so mentally and physically and emotionally exhausting to deal with, especially when my son, who is also disabled, kept me up till 2 o'clock the day before, because I don't like medicating him. He's only 8, and we have been given medication for him, but we've been told it probably won't work for more than a year. So the last thing I want to be doing is trying to sedate my child. You know, that's no way of living. That's not a life. That's just existing. So I tried to do this assessment, and again, the assessment, it was done over the phone. They're not really asking people to go in to have assessments anymore at this moment in time. It's all done over the phone. And because my disability is not just physical, it's also mental, they're there asking me about, you know, this and that and the other. And a lot of what they asked me wasn't even relevant to my disability. And you know, and today, like, for example, I am in excruciating pain. I might not look like I am, but I am. And it's because I've had another flare-up, as I call it, of bile acid malabsorption, which I have spoken about in the past. And luckily, I do have a medical appointment to talk about that later on in the month. But what I'm trying to do maybe with my son is, because people don't understand, and it's different for everybody. And you know, and I know people who have disabled children, and I've worked with people who have got disabled children or one thing or another. And so sometimes the attitude to other people that are full-time carers or have disabilities can be worse than people that haven't got this illness or disability and can maybe be a little bit more sympathetic. I've known people say, well, I'm a carer and I work full-time. Why can't you? Well, that's you. Congratulations. I'm so glad that you're able to be a full-time carer for your child or whoever you care for, and have a job and have a house, you know, and not have to rely on benefits, even though legally you probably should be claiming that money, and then the government can't say, oh, you know, we haven't got enough disabled people in the country anymore. Well, no, you have. It's just people aren't claiming. And why would they? because claiming is so degrading and so demoralising. And with me, I'm in a catch-22 situation. If I was to work, I would lose my carer's allowance for my child. I would then also lose the benefits that I'm entitled to as a carer, which enable me to get free medication, which then helps me to do my job as a carer. So I'm not having to pay for my medication, because if I had to pay for it, I wouldn't take it. It's as simple as that. And it's just, I can't afford to. I can't afford it anymore. It's so expensive now for medication that if I wasn't getting it on the NHS, like a lot of people, I probably wouldn't be able to afford it at all. And then it would also mean I wouldn't be entitled to housing support. So there's like this domino effect. Yes, I would love to work, but when my son heats me up till 2 a.m. every single morning because of his disabilities, I am told by my local council that I cannot put him into a mainstream school because he's too disabled, and he's not disabled enough to get an ESA, an educational healthcare plan. Then I have no choice but to homeschool him, which is mentally, physically, and emotionally debilitating. Not just for him, but for me as well as a person. And some days it's fantastic. We get so much done and we achieve so much together as a couple. The teamwork between us is amazing. Other days, it's not. I mean, if anyone's ever watched the movie Room, which is based on a book, that is how it feels. Okay? I've not been locked in my house by some psycho who kidnapped me and they impregnated me, but the relationship between the mother and the child in Room is sometimes how I feel with my child. I can relate to that, because our life, even before lockdown, consisted of the property I rent. We have an outdoor, but we don't go out there when it's raining. My son suffers with sensory processing disorder, so he doesn't like loud noises. There's so many things that trigger him that I have to be vigilant of. No, I don't want him to be wrapped up in a bubble. I don't want him to be bubble boy. He does go out on occasions, but even a trip is something as simple as trying to catch the bus or go to the local convenience store or take him on a day trip. It's so mentally and physically exhausting that by the time we get back, that's if we haven't ended up having to pay for a taxi because we can't use public transport, or something else has happened. All I want to do is sleep. He doesn't. He just wants to sing and dance and run around the house. He doesn't have an off switch. So what I'm going to try and do, it won't be this week, but this is like the prequel to it, is I want to try and do a day in the life. Sorry, I'm yawning away here. Of being a full-time carer, and I mean a full-time carer, for a child who has special educational needs. So please bear with me, and it is definitely something that I will try and do before the month is out. Thank you.